Well, I'm back from my Nebraska trip. Um, my hair has gone a little bit more on the green side than the blue, although I guess from certain lighting it doesn't look that much different than normal. I've returned, even though I still had videos going up, but they were much more pre-recorded, as you could tell by the fact that in them I had long hair. But I brought back a lot of postcards and Barry and a couple of shirts, and I'm just gonna kind of talk about the trip and show you the pictures that we took, talk about some of the different Nebraska landmarks that we saw, some of the different not just national, well, we went to some different national and state parks. We went to different, like a bunch of different tourist attractions and such, of course, that like celebrate the state itself, or that show just like some different oddities in our state. um, and before we do that, I was going to list off some Nebraska facts. I was going to list off, well, here's a picture of the state flag, which of course has the state seal on it. Our state flower is goldenrod. Our state tree is the cottonwood tree. I don't actually know if we saw any goldenrod while we were driving around. We saw a bunch of black-eyed Susans, which are kind of like a smaller version of like a sunflower. But I don't know if we saw any goldenrod. We did see a lot of cottonwood trees, that was for sure. Our state rock is prairie agate, which agates are just like this type of rock that are in a type of rock. I think. Well, if you've seen like these kind of flat rocks that have like different types of rings in them, I think these are different types of agate. This is actually, I think it's either this is either just straight blue agate or it's like dyed agate, because I think like you can like dye them different colors. This one is, if it's not really this actual blue, it's a blue agate, or it's dyed. I think it got a little bit of chipped in the ride, but that's okay. It mostly survived. Blue agate is actually our state gemstone. I also got a pink piece of agate, pinkish purple, and I got a regular piece of purple agate. Again, I'm not sure if these are dyed or not. Couldn't actually find any regular agate, unfortunately. Prairie agate is more on the brown side. Still pretty, but not quite the same. As I said, those are the state gemstone and the state rock. The state bird is the meadowlark. I actually just have some generic Nebraska postcards here. And I think I have, do I have one with a meadowlark on it? Ah, I do. I also have a picture of a meadowlark. Here is a meadowlark postcard we got. Here we go. There's just a bunch of miscellaneous ones here. Nebraska's Middle West Pass. Some different places. In like the Bluffs area. If you've been told your entire life that Nebraska is flat, that's from people that have only flown over the state or have only driven through like our main interstate, or our highway, that just goes straight across the state from east to west or west to east, which mainly follows our Platte River Valley, which, yes, the parts of the state are rather flat. That is where a lot of like the farmland is, but we also have a lot of other areas of the state that are not flat, and I'll be talking about those. As a taste, these are some postcard that has some different bluffs in the background. Can't really see them too well, but I'll show you more. And then, of course, because I'm a bunny, find a postcard that has a warrior bunny on it. It's a jackalope. It says, Nebraska's legendary warrior rabbit. Jackalope. Some other stuff. Our state mammal is the white-tailed deer. This is a picture of a white-tailed deer here. I don't think Bambi is a white-tailed deer, but I could be wrong on that. But they're our state mammal. And this is not our state mammal, but this is a pronghorn. If I can show the picture the right way. Come on. There we go. Now you can see it. This is a pronghorn. It looks like it should be in Africa. No, it's not. It's from here. It's a type of antelope that's here in the States, here in Nebraska. Very well known in Nebraska. We did see 3 of them while we were driving around. We did not hit them. Thankfully, we did not hit them. They were far enough away that we did not hit them. And then I also got this Nebraska shaped postcard. Greetings from Nebraska. So we left on Sunday, and it was supposed to be Saturday, Sunday, or sorry, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we were back in Lincoln on Thursday night. So the first stop, so as I think I mentioned in the video where I made the announcement of like, oh look, I have no hair. Oh, I'm gonna go on a trip. Oh, I'm taking Barry with me. I have been on at least one other trip around Nebraska way back when I was at the beginning of like in like the summer of like either 2001 or 2002. It was like one of the summers right after my parents had gotten divorced, and my mom took me and her mom, my grandma, on a trip around the state. And we saw a bunch of different things. We saw some of the things that like we saw on this trip again. Like we saw Carhenge on this trip, and I've seen Carhenge before. I'll go over that one. I've seen Chimney Rock. That's possibly something that you've heard about from Nebraska again. I've been there before. Still impressive to see this time around. There's some other places that we saw in like the panhandle of the state that I've seen before. And then there's like other places where it's like, well, I've been here before, I think, but it's been a really long time, so I just don't remember it that much. Because that was almost like, 18, 19, 20 years ago or something like that. It was like the last time I went and saw some of these things. But so in preparation for stuff, as I said, I got my hair cut and dyed and everything, let my nieces dye it. And then I also made berry cookies, which were all packed, and I forgot to take them. We had made, I had the two younger kids, my younger niece and my nephew, come over on like the Friday before we were going to leave, and they helped me bake the cookies. We made some that had, that were peanut butter variety, that had peanut butter, like chocolate peanut butter Reese's in the middle, and then peanut butter chip eyes. And then we also made ones that were just like the bricks with like the chocolate in the middle with, chocolate chip size to differentiate them. And I had them all packed and wrapped and ready to go. And then I forgot them, unfortunately. But I did remember to bring Barry. Barry did come on the trip. The fleshy came on the trip. The bricks did not, unfortunately. But that means I get to eat them now, and then I can, take them and, I'm going to give some to my nieces and nephews so they can have some too, because they liked them before. But yeah, so when we're all getting packed up, Barry thought that he was going to get to drive, but unfortunately, he can't reach the pedals or the steering wheel or any of the gear shifts or anything like that, so that wasn't going to happen. So we packed my nieces and nephew and my dad into the car, and that was fun. It was like a game of Tetris in the back with the with the suitcases. That was fun, with the suitcases and coolers and bags of snacks and a couple of pillows, because pillows. So that was fun. And then Barry, in the process of getting everything put where it needed to be, kind of ended up getting put into like the door. So he kind of got squished there for a little while on our way down the road. But then he popped back up, and he got to take a picture with my dad. They both have the same middle initial. My dad's middle initial is D, although we actually know what it stands for. It stands for Douglas. Yeah. Douglas is my dad's middle name. My dad carries the will of D. It should be like one of those things in One Piece. What's your middle name? Douglas. Do you know what all that means in the way of Doug? No. My dad has a vague understanding of One Piece. But no, I don't know where I fall in like what the D stands for the will of D for One Piece. But we have that. And then we went, our first stop down the road was the Archway Monument at Carhenge, which I've been to before. It's actually, this year, it's like 21 years old, or like last year it was like 20 years old, so 21 years old this year. I've been to the Archway Monument many, many times. I remember going there when it was new, and I've been there a couple of times since then, since I have family that live around like the Carhenge area. Just look at a map of Nebraska and just, follow along. I was actually going to do something where like I did like our div our mileage every single day, but I forgot to do it the first night, and then we drove around some more, and I was just like, oh darn it, I forgot about that. So I did, however, take a picture of my mileometer when I got home for the tripometer to see how many miles we went. which I'll tell you that number at the end. Um, but we got everything packed up, and then we worked our way through. We yeah, we got to the Archway Monument, and it's basically the Archway Monument is basically this archway that goes across the road. It's a museum that tells you like the experience of like the settlers and stuff like that on the plains all the way up through like, like the 1950s and stuff like that, when like the interstates and the highways were coming through. And it's this archway that goes across the interstate. It's like it starts on one side, goes across, and then it's on the other side. And it's one of those sites where it's like, if you ain't paying attention for it when you're driving down the road, you'll see it and you'll go, oh my God. If you're not prepared for what it is. You're like, oh, it's this archway monument. Okay, well, I guess we'll look at that. You come down the road, you come driving down the interstate, and it just appears. And it's just like this all the way across the road. Here's one of the postcards. It goes all the way across the road. Yeah, like over the interstate. And like, that's what you see. And, you pull off, you go in, they have these, towers on either side. You start on one side, you go inside, you go in and you get these, they're audio devices. They used to be like headphones that you would put on. They've updated them a little bit since then. That would go through and like, it'll tell you about different areas of the archway as you're walking through it. And then you go up this escalator. And they have like an old guy at the bottom of the escalator that kind of looks like you would expect, like an old, like an old West tour guide type thing. He's down there at the bottom of the escalator, sends you up. And like you hear different accounts from different journals and letters that were sent by people. You hear descriptions of like what's going on in front of you as you work your way through the archway. You start on one side, you go through, and then you go up a level, and then you go back through. So you still end up back at on the same side as like where you parked, but you've like gone through and then gone across. And then like it goes through like the settlers and the pioneers, through like the establishment of like the railroad, the Union Pacific Railroad. It goes through stuff about like the Pony Express riders, goes through about all these different things in like Nebraska history and Midwest history. Talks about cowboys, talks about all this other stuff, talks about like the start of the interstate and like drive-in movies, and like some of the first cars that were coming through and everything, and like all these like different travel things that people would do in the area. And then like there's like this 50s type diner at the end that you can like look out over the interstate and like see the cars coming underneath you, and they have like speedometers in the windows that like track how fast the cars are going. So like you have fun that way. And then you go back through. They have like a new addition piece to it that was not there the last time I was there. Really talk about. I was like, now we're wiring everything for internet. So there's like all these cables that run underneath everything. So we have that. And then like we went to the gift shop, and I got postcards because I'm me and I like postcards. We got Sandhill Cranes, which maybe you've heard of the Sandhill Cranes. Here's another archway monument. I've been there so many times, it's not even funny. Here's the escalator that you go up at the beginning of it. And then I got squish pennies, because squish pennies are also good. And then I also bought arrowheads. Pretty arrowheads. They have like a box of these. You can like dig through them. I also bought hematite because I like hematite and they're fun magnets to play with. Yeah, I'm gonna like go through like this whole pile. I'm gonna show you this pile of stuff on my bed, like all these different piles of like postcards and pamphlets and stuff on the bed, and I got shirts in the background that I bought. Yeah. And then we didn't take Barry through the archway, but we did take some pictures of him outside the archway. I got this one in front of the building. We got this one in front of a statue of two boys that are riding on a horse. Slightly more grisly than the picture actually, than the statue looks from a distance. The boys were being chased by Native Americans and kind of got a couple of arrows gone through them. Both of the boys survived and like had long lives, but it's like, okay, yeah. And then, like, there's pictures, like, these are, like, native plants and native wildlife that's around here. So I took a picture of Barry with the sign. My nieces were helping me with pictures and stuff like that, which was nice. Got picture of me and Barry next to this buffalo or bison. Yeah. This giant bison statue that they have there, which this bison is much bigger than normal bison are. Do not take it as a size comparison. Like, I am tiny. I'm like 5'6", so yeah. Bison are not this size if you've never seen a bison in real life. But so we had fun with that and everything. And we worked our way through that, and we took some other pictures on either side of the archway on top of the towers. On one side there is like a horse with, like, it looks like wings kind of coming off the back. It's not a Pegasus by any means, but it's like a horse, and then it's like, I think they're supposed to represent like wind or something. I don't know. They're just these beautiful carvings that they have over it. And then of course, we got some pictures in front of the some pictures of the archway itself where it stretches across. And I think I got a picture of Barry with the archway, maybe. Did I? No, I didn't. Just a picture. No picture of Barry with the archway. I had my nieces and nephew, like, throw them in the air, and I took a picture of it. I'm like, I'm going to try to avoid putting my nieces and nephews' faces in this video because they are all minors and I don't want to do that. We did, however, relocate Barry to a different spot to sit in the car. He now gets to sit in the pocket of the door, which seems a bit more comfortable. And he tried sitting on the back seat, but that didn't work. It wasn't going to work very well. And then I just did this as a joke because it's like, as we're driving around, as you're driving down the interstate and everything, yes, there are lots of farms all over the place. I'm not going to argue with that. In this part of the state, there is a lot of flat area, which is very good for farmlands. And there are lots of, this time of year is when the farmers are harvesting, stuff for like hay bales and stuff like that. So you'll see that. You'll still see, like, there's lots of corn growing in the fields, and there's like other places where you see like soybeans growing and stuff like that. But like they're getting all of like the wheat and the hay harvested in like hay bales and wheat bales and such. So it's like we just see like these fields filled with like hay bales all over the place. And I was like, these are the hay bales in their natural habitats, where they've been rolled and are currently waiting to be moved on to market. Some of them have also been lined up so they can be more so they can congregate together. I was bored and I needed something to do in the car, so we did that. Another thing we did to help keep the kids a little bit more entertained in the car was we had given them a list of like all 50 states, so they could do like all the different like state plates. The first day they were rather good at trying to do it. The second day they were good too, but after like the third day they're like, okay, this is not as entertaining as we thought. And it wasn't just state license plates, it was also like the different counties in Nebraska, which there's like 90 or like 80 or 90 some counties in Nebraska. And like almost all of them have like, like a number in front of their, number and then dash and then however many, whatever, letter number combination for that, except for like Lincoln, Omaha, and I think it's I want to say Bellevue for some of the different, for like the different, like Lancaster County is like where Lincoln is, and like it doesn't have one because we have too many cars, so they have like numbers and letters, and like there's like two other ones that have like a high enough population that they need to do it that way instead of just doing like letter or number dash and then so many letters. So we're driving around, and then we get to the first place we stayed was a hotel in North Platte. It was a motel. I've stayed in motels before. I've stayed in various hotels before. I slightly prefer hotels because I just like that being inside feeling a little bit better than like, oh, my door's outside, so if I need to go out, then I need to go outside. But it was a nice hotel. It was a nice motel. We swam and everything after we got food. We actually ate at a place called Penny's Diner, which was like this 50s style diner type thing. I was like, well, we just saw like a 50s style diner in like the archway, so why don't we eat at like a 50s style diner? So we ate there. They had good food. The girls and I shared a shake. And then, you know, we relaxed in the hotel room and everything. And Barry helped me with some organizing of some of my pictures on the computer. So I knew what I was going to be putting up online. You know, it was like, we'll use this one and this one. And then the next day, Monday, we did Buffalo Bill's Scouts Rest Ranch. Now, you may have heard of Buffalo Bill before if you're from the Midwest, or you may have not. It depends on all like where you're watching this video from. Um, Buffalo Bill had been, I think he had been a soldier in the army, and he had been like, you know, in this section of the country. This, you know, he was like in this section and like dealing with Native American conflicts and stuff like that. He had killed an Indian during his time in the military, and then he left the military, if I remember correctly, and he started this touring group of performers. So it's like, you know, cowboys and cowgirls, and like if you've heard of Annie Oakley, she was part of this as well. He had lots of these different like trick shooters and trick riders and stuff like that, and like, you know, bull catchers and stuff like that. So they would like catch stuff. So it was a little bit like a rodeo at times. And then he would also have like Native Americans be part of his group, and like he had well, we went to the Scouts Restaurant, which was just this area outside of North Platte that he built up. And it's like there's this nice huge barn there that they keep all these different like carriages in, and that they keep, you know, where they had like a blacksmith shop in there. They had all this other stuff. They had like these different types of barbed wire. So he took a picture of Barry with like all these barbed wire behind him. There's, you know, there's like a buffalo head there. There's like a deer and, you know, some other animal heads and stuff like that, because Buffalo Bill was a hunter to a degree. And I've been here before. My dad took me here before on one of the other trips that we did on a different trip that we did, where we drove across the state. So I'd been here before, but the kids hadn't. And they have, you know, take pictures out front and everything. And we walked through the house that like Buffalo Bill had built. That's where like he lived with his wife and their children and his family. And you know, like they had like bunk houses and stuff like that for people to stay in, of course. And like they had like posters and everything from, well, they had this like, it's like horseshoe, like this chair made out of horseshoes, literally a chair made out of horseshoes sitting on the front porch. So I took a picture of Barry in that. And then we did, you know, you tour through the house, and it's just, you know, this old like, you know, 1800s house and everything. So there's, you know, lots of very ornate carved thing, you know, carved wood, and like these beautiful red glass chandelier that I'm like, I want that chandelier, and like all this other stuff. And like you walk through the house, and you know, it's very nice and everything. And like, you know, they have like these different displays. Like they had a display about Annie Oakley. They had a display about Buffalo Bill had like comics written about him. And so it's like, you know, took a picture of Barry by the comics, because I'm a dork. And while I was there, one of the things I got in the gift shop there, well, first, well, I showed a picture of the ranch house already. Here's it lit up at Christmas on a postcard. Postcard of Buffalo Bill himself with his horse. He loved his horse. This is one of the postcards that they had that had some of the Native Americans on it. And just, you know, one of the pamphlets that they had about the rest ranch. The barn that they had like a ton of different, well, before I do that, I bought a jackalope piggy bank because me. It's a jackalope piggy bank. Why wouldn't I buy it? It's a rabbit with horns. So, jackalope piggy bank. Stick. But, you know, like you go through the barn, and like they have these exhibits about like the different costumes that they would wear, different writers, different other people that were there. You know, Buffalo Bill's family members and such like that, like stuff about the Native Americans that were there. There's, you know, he you know, what he did was in the show, he let the Native Americans be able to show, like, they do their performances of like their different ceremonies, like their like powwow type ceremonies. And I apologize if you're of Native American descent and I mispronounce any of this stuff. I apologize. or I mislabel something, I do apologize. But like he would do that because like at the time it was like illegal, I think, for the Native Americans to like do that stuff. But because they were doing it in a performance setting, they were allowed to do it. So he had kind of gotten around that rule and allowed them to do it. He was a very good advocate for the Native Americans. And like there was like lots of between like his writers and stuff like that, like the Native Americans, there were lots of marriages that happened in that time frame. I think he had been friends with like Sitting Bull. I think I could have been wrong about that, and I apologize if I got that wrong. But he could have. There's like pictures of Sitting Bull in there and such like that. The chief Sitting Bull and such, like all these other different Native American chiefs and tribes and tribesmen and tribeswomen that were like part of this traveling show that they had. And like of course, I mentioned we had Annie Oakley in this and everything. And about the musical, Annie Get Your Gun, the Annie Oakley, and she was part of this show for a long time as like a trick shooter. And like my dad was explaining to the kids that like she was such a good shot that you could be holding like the ace of spades in your hand and she would shoot directly through like the center of the spade. And and take that's how good of a shot she was, even like in that time with that type of firearms. Imagine how good of a shot she would be now, with like modern firearms. Ooh. That's both a cool thought and a scary thought, so we'll move on. But like so we see this as he built this up and everything, and they have like wanted posters and stuff like that, and they had like a cutout thing where you could stand in a wanted poster, so I put Barry and I in the wanted poster. And then another thing that Buffalo Bill did was he also was into preserving buffalo. I mean, into preserving bison. And it's like, yeah, of course he had hunted them at one point, that was part of his moniker, but that didn't mean that he wanted to see them go extinct. He didn't want that. He wanted to preserve parts of that as well, so he made a like I think his land is like a preserve for them. And at the moment I think they have at least like 2 or 3 full-grown bison, and they have at least one baby one, because they had said at the visitor center, they had said that, well, we have like one baby bison right now that's I think about 2 months old, is what they said. So we went and walked around the area where we could see the bison, and we saw the baby, and it's cute and everything. And they have these signs of bison, do not tease us, or whatever the sign was. What was that sign? What was it called? There's like artwork all over the place in these different areas, like the old posters that they have for like the different events that they would do. There's quotes up around the place from like Sitting Bull and Annie Oakley and Buffalo Bill and a bunch of these other people that had been part of the show or had been friends with Buffalo Bill. There's like Buffalo Bill and the bison and everything. Was like one of the signs that they had by the bison that talks about how, yes, he had hunted them and he used them as part of his moniker, but he didn't want like to see them go extinct because he thought that they were amazing creatures. And then of course, we saw the baby bison. There's buffalo display, do not tease us type thing, which I just thought was hilarious. And I'm like, somebody please take a picture of that, because like all of us have phones at this point in time. My nephew just got his first phone, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, sure. He's going into middle school, so, but like, so we're all doing, taking pictures on our phones and everything. So we're having fun with that. We saw the baby bison, and then they had this, bison cutout. So it was like, I got a picture of like Barry in the bison, so in that he's Barry D. Bison. I couldn't resist. It was right there. What did you expect me to do? I like puns. I'm like Oda. I like puns. And then our next stop was the Golden Spike Tower, which is also in North Platte. It's not that far away. The Golden Spike Tower is at Bailey Rail Yard. The Bailey Rail Yards are the largest rail yards this side of the Mississippi, and of the Mississippi River. And it's this huge rail yard that's in North Platte, and it's probably the main staple of like most people that live in North Platte or have lived in North Platte since this place started, probably have either they worked there, or their brother or their sister or their spouse or like a friend of theirs or something like that worked at this place. And because it's a rail yard town. And, you know, so it's like these, you know, all this, you know, it's like there's hundreds of different rail cars that are coming in, like coming in from Wyoming filled with coal to then be shipped out, or coming back through to go back to Wyoming to get refilled with coal to get then come back, or come back, you know, coal or whatever else that they're shipping through this area, and such. So yeah, we did the Bailey rail yards, and they have this tower there. So the stats on the rail yard is 2,850 acres, 8 miles long. There's 2 hump yards, which a hump yard is where it's they like get the engine up to the top of the hill, and then like then they can like get it go down the hill and get it into like the certain areas where it needs to go. And I think it like actually saves on diesel. And then there's like one diesel shop, so there's, you know, this huge thing where there's like all these diesel shops and everything in it. This is like the tower that they built there, and the reason it's called the Golden Spike Tower is when they finished the railroads, when the Union Pacific finally met in the middle, they had, the final rail in it was the railroad spike, and it was gold. And since then, obviously, because that was back in the 1800s. Since then, that spike has since been stolen. Which, duh. Yeah, duh. Which, of course, is gonna get stolen. But like, so they have like, articles about that all over the place in the tower. They have like flags all around the bottom of the tower. There, you can go up into the tower, and like they have like 2 observation decks. One is like an open air observation deck that you go out onto, and you can like look out at the rail yard. Both decks look out at the rail yard, obviously, but you can like look out at the rail yard and take as many pictures as you want. And like the kids love taking pictures at this place because they've never been here before. I've been here once with my dad, and like it doesn't really matter too much, but like the tickets that they give out when you're like paying for your tickets, they look like railroad tickets. I just thought that was so cute. And like I've been there before, it's the Golden Spike Tower, and that was a very fun thing to do. The kids very much liked it. You go up in the tower. That's like an 800-foot some high tower, and you go up in the tower and you can look out, and you go up to the next level where there's like an indoor observation area, and like you could like eat in this area and eat lunch. I'm sure some of the workers would come up sometime and like eat their lunch here or whatever. And like they have a video down in the entry area / gift shop where it talks about like the history of the rail yard. And this was like a place where like a lot of soldiers were sent out during World War I and World War II, and like where they had built up there had been like a whole amount of like you may have heard of like the USO, which is like these this like entertainment section that like goes and like helps entertain the troops and stuff like that. And it's like comedians and actors and actresses and musicians and singers and dancers and like all the stuff that go and like they entertain the troops. This wasn't quite that. This was like a whole bunch of volunteers that were there to like send the troops off, and with like good luck and like please come back safe type stuff. Like it was just thousands of these volunteers that would do that all on their own. And so it was like that type of a history. The tower is not very old. It's less than 20 years old as far as I can remember. But because it's like it's not as old as like the archway. It's not 20 years old. It's like less than that. And I bought a "We Can Do It" shirt because they also talk about Rosie the Riveters there. And my grandmother on my mom's side had been a Rosie the Riveter. My grandfather had been off in World War II. He did not leave through this place. He left through a place in Omaha that was called the Durham Railway Station, which it's still a running railway station, but it's also been turned into a museum, and I love the museum, and I might talk about that in a different video. But my grandmother had been a Rosie the Riveter, and this is a well-known fact in our family. And so I got a shirt that has the "We Can Do It" thing on it, which I really like. I got that there, got postcards, got squish pennies again, and then after we left there, then it was after that, we went to, I don't remember if we just had like a really long drive then, or if it was like the long drive was after lunch, but, no, I think the long drive was after lunch. So then we went to a place that's called Paxton, which is just a town in Nebraska. It's a small town, but they have a restaurant there that is called like Ollies Steakhouse. And the original owner of Ollies Steakhouse had been this big game hunter. So he'd gone all over the world and caught all these different animals and trapped them and killed them and everything. And he had them like stuffed and taxidermied and everything all over the place in his. Look, there's stuff from Africa and South America and Asia, and there's like a polar bear right as soon as you walk in the front door. There's like a bison head that like my niece sat under. There's like all this stuff. There's birds there and everything, like pictures and stuff like that. And like all of this done was like all of this hunting was done like to a degree like long before a lot of these animals were like either endangered or something like that. So it's like it was a different time. I don't think they've added anything to the collection for a while, but I could be wrong on that. But it's like this steakhouse and everything, and yeah, you can order like prime rib and sirloin and stuff like that, but we didn't do that. We got less stuff, less expensive things. We ate there, and then we left, and we headed to drive through the Sandhills. I think you can read that. And now, if you've heard of them, there's a type of crane that comes from Nebraska that is called the Sandhill Cranes, which, you may have heard of them before. They're kind of a famous bird in regards to Nebraska itself. They're a crane. I had like a picture of them earlier. They're like a crane that have like a red marking on their head. And they're called the Sandhill Cranes because I think if I remember correctly, it's because that was like where they were first spotted, was like in the Sandhills. They like to come down to the Platte River at one point when they're migrating, and like it's this big event in Nebraska where it's like you could drive to this area and you can like watch the cranes. They sleep this area, and they sleep in this certain area along our Platte River, which is this giant river that runs through most of the state, and that most of the rivers in the state like feed into the Platte River one way or the other. They feed here, and then like they migrate on the next day. So it's like they come in like waves over the course of like a couple of weeks, and then like they keep they fly off like in the morning or whatever. You can like watch them leave, and there's like beautiful pictures that have been done about it and stuff like that. We drove through the Sandhills, and the Sandhills are definitely not flat. It is lots of ups and downs and curves and just all over. Lots of this part of Nebraska is not flat. And so we're driving through that, and I mean like it's like you see trees every now and then, there's farms, or you see houses every now and then. This is a very remote area of the state to a degree, because it took us we drove through not the largest section of the Sandhills, but a good section, a good long section that was like about 2-hour long drive as we're driving through the Sandhills, and we see trees occasionally, we see birds and stuff. And like the reason they're called the Sandhills is because they're covered in like vegetation and stuff like that, but you go just a little bit under that and it's just sand, just sand that's sitting there. And Nebraska several million years ago, during the time of like the dinosaurs or whatever, was like this giant underwater sea. So all of this stuff that is that now that we have now was once underwater. So it's like all this sand was once like the bottom of a giant ocean. And since then it's all the water has receded with like plate tectonics and the ice age and stuff like that's receded and everything. And glaciers came into filling in parts of this area as well and making it, and of course the Platte River and the Platte River Valley made certain parts of it a lot flatter, of course, as well. But like the further west you go in Nebraska, particularly when you go into like the Panhandle, the less flat it gets. There's still like periodic areas where it's like kind of flat, but then it's just like nope, there's all these ridges and bluffs and everything, which I will get to. But we drove through that, and we drove through the Sandhills, which we really didn't get out and take any pictures in the Sandhills. We also drove by this place that's called Lake McConaughey, which has nothing to do with Matthew McConaughey with the actor. It's just called Lake McConaughey. It's like this huge kind of man-made lake to a degree, because there's like a hydroelectric like power plant there with a dam and everything as well. But like this lake is huge. Like you go on this bridge and like you can't see the end of this dang lake. It's like just water as far as the eye can see on one side. And like, so we drove over that and everything, and entered the sandhills from there. But like the sandhills also have like these things that are called blowouts all over the place, which is where like the sand has like broken through, and like you can see like parts of ridges and like the rock that would be like underneath the sand. But like it's just like these other areas where there's just like nothing but sand, and there's like black-eyed Susans all along the road. And there was a flower that my dad mentioned that's like it's an endangered or threatened species, that is like this type of flower that only grows near like where the blowouts are. And we didn't see any, or as far as I was aware, we didn't see any. If I can find a picture of one, because we didn't see any, so we didn't get any pictures of them ourselves. I'll see if I can find a picture and I can pop it in here. It was like a blowout type of flower. I don't remember exactly what type of flower it was, or what it was called, but it seemed interesting, so I'll mention that here. But so we're driving through the sand hills and everything. The sky is like very clear at this point in time, so it's just lots of that, lots of driving, scanning to see if we can pick up any radio stations. Oh my god, I see another car. Whenever we pass by another car, because it was like long stretches where you don't see a car. It's like there's still some farmland in there, but not very much. It's like the other thing is like, oh look, cows. Every time we drive by cows. And then we ended up in a place that is called Alliance, Nebraska, which has, as I mentioned before, has a place called Carhenge. So you're probably like, what's a Carhenge? So, the origin of Carhenge, from what I understand, is, let me grab those pictures. The origin of Carhenge is there had been a family in Alliance years ago. Like this place has been around since like the 80s or the 70s or something like that. It was like when this place got started. I think maybe the 80s. I'll show you that picture in a second. But it was a family that was like the dad died and they were there doing the funeral and everything, and like they took the land, and like one of the other sons or something had been like over in England for a long time, like deployed over there, or like working over there, and he came back and he's like, well, they wanted to do something to honor their dad, so it's like, well, how about we do like, they have like Stonehenge in England, so why don't we do Carhenge? So they basically took all of these different cars. They took all of these different cars and painted them and like mapped out, like made Stonehenge out of cars. And yeah, that's just like one of those moments where it's just like, okay. And like, they make Carhenge, and it's, you can walk around it, and like, here's another postcard of it where it's, they painted all the cars gray, and I think they found cars that were like the same size as, like what the stones were at Stonehenge, were like the same lengths and widths and stuff like that, and like put them like, some are buried in the ground, some are like toppled over, some are just laying there, because like, it's based off of Stonehenge. And like, it's not just that, there's like other art sculptures around there. There's like a dinosaur that's made out of like, old car parts and metal and stuff. And there's like a fish that's made out of like old car parts and such. And like all this other artwork that's around there, and like you can walk around them, and there's like you're not supposed to write on any of the stuff. You can take pictures around them all you want, but you don't write on anything except the autograph card. And and then like there's this autograph card that has like stuff that's been on, like autographs that are from it, from like like people signing it with like pens and like carving stuff in it, and spray painting it or markers or whatever all over this car that's like poking out of the ground. And there's like all types of stuff on it. There's names, there's quotes, there's song lyrics, there's pictures drawn on, all of it. And like, so there's that, and there's like all this other car artwork that people have made, and there's like a bench that's made out of like fenders of a car or something like that, and I took a picture of Barry on it, and like there's like an explanation as to like how this got here and what it is, and like you go in the gift shop and you buy something, and like this aerial picture postcard type thing that you can get of of like the cars from up above. And it's just I mean, I've been here, I think this has now been like my third time to Carhenge, because like my mom and I went there when we were on our trip with my grandma when I was a kid. around the state. And, you know, so I've been there that time. And then I think I came here one time with my mom and my friends back from a different trip. And then I don't remember if my dad and I stopped here at one point on like our way back from like when we went to Colorado after I graduated. Um, but like, so this is like either my third or my fourth time at Carhenge, and I'm still blown away by it. And yeah, they have squish pennies, so I got squish pennies. Squish pennies. They have like a dinosaur, and they have like the fish and like some other carvings of like the cars and such. And then we rode on from after Alliance. We drove through Bridgeport. We stayed in Bridgeport in a bit nicer of a hotel. First night, I could not sleep the first night for whatever reason. My brain would just not shut up. Second night, I slept much better. And then from Bridgeport, then we went to these places outside of Bridgeport, these stones outside of Bridgeport that are called Jailhouse Rock, and Jailhouse Rock and Courthouse Rock. These were around long before the Elvis songs. But before, like the night previously, not at the hotel, I took like my stuffed animals and like Barry and like my niece's stuffed animals and like put them next to each other and took a picture. It was like Barry hanging out with his peeps. The red teddy bear is mine. His name is Ted Ted. I've had him since I was like 5. But then, you know, then we drove, then the next day on a Tuesday, we went to Courthouse Rock and Jailhouse Rock, which are outside of Bridgeport. And there are these two huge rocks, two like bluff things that just like randomly like pop out of the ground. And they're huge, and you can drive up to them, and you can kind of walk around them a little bit. You used to be able to climb on them years ago, but because of erosion and such like that, and that part of the state's kind of in a drought at the moment, so it's like kind of making the rocks a little more brittle. You have to be a little more careful with that. I took a picture of Barry next to like the historical marker sign that they had out front. Just like these huge rocks that just pop out of nowhere, and it's just like, okay. I do not remember if I've been to these before. I think I may have. On the trip with my mom and my grandma. But it's also just like amazing watching the kids see this stuff, because like as we're driving through the sand hills, we come like as we reach different like tops of the hills and stuff like that, you can see quite a ways. And yeah, and like the flatter parts of the state, yeah, you can see quite a ways at times as well. But then there's other areas where it's just like you can like see even further, and you just see like rolling hills, like an ocean of hills all around you. And like in this case, it's just like, you know, you could see these things from miles away when like we're coming into Bridgeport the night before, and it's still bright enough that they could see quite a ways, but they see these rocks, and it's just like, those are what we're going to see tomorrow. Oh my god. And like their ages are like 17, and then, you know, like 13, and then 11. And I'm not giving out full names, so I'm not too worried about that. But like they have that, and like this is the first time. I was like, yeah, they've driven across the state before, but it was like they were on their way to Nevada, or on their way to somewhere else, not to like these sections of the state. It wasn't like they were looking for this stuff before. And like even like when we came to the Archway Monument, they're just like, when you like come around the corner, they're just like, oh my god. And so we drove up to Jailhouse Rock and Courthouse Rock. I had wanted to play Elvis's Jailhouse Rock, but unfortunately that did not happen. We had a nice lady take our picture in front of it, but again, not showing that because it shows the kids' faces a little too much. But I did get a picture of Barry in front of them, in front of the rocks. And like as you walk up the path that's there, you can like look down into like the gully area and like see all these other rocks that are just kind of like there, and like that does not look like a fun place to fall down into. And we are getting very close to rattlesnake country at this point in time, so we do have to be very careful. So it's like, tell the kids, you know, it's like just listen for anything that sounds like animals, or anything that does not sound like a cricket or something like that. A cricket or a grasshopper. We saw grasshoppers all over the place, and like dragonflies all over the place. One of them even like landed on a fence, and I got really close to it, and like it wasn't moving, and then it left. I was just like, okay, dragonfly. I like dragonflies. But you know, so it's like, you know, the kids are just like in awe of this stuff, and like it's like just looking at it in general, it's just like you can see all the different geological layers through them. And like these gullies do not look like fun things to fall into, and they would not be Thankfully, throughout the whole trip, this is not a spoiler, but we did not see any rattlesnakes or anything like that throughout the whole trip, so that was good. That would have been a bad thing. Well, it would be one thing to see it from like a distance, but not something you want to see up close, particularly with 3 small children. Well, 3 children. And then we moved on after we left Jailhouse Rock and Courthouse Rock. Then we're working our way through to Chimney Rock, which, as I mentioned, you may have heard of Chimney Rock before. It's one of our very famous landmarks in Nebraska. And my nephew was doing like a car bingo, road trip bingo in the back seat. So Barry was helping him. Again, okay with it because you can't see my nephew's face. And then we get to Chimney Rock. I've been to Chimney Rock. It has been a long time, but I have been there before. I think only one other time, and that was with my mom and my grandma. But we get up to Chimney Rock, and you can only get so close to it because there's like so many people like used to climb all over the dang thing, and that's caused more erosion, and then just more erosion in general. Plus, part of the area around there very much has rattlesnakes. Because I remember that from when we went there when I was a kid. And yeah, there's rattlesnakes there, so you can only get so close. But they have a visitor center, and it's a very nicely done visitor center. You learn more about like the plains and the pioneers and the Native Americans that were in the area. Obviously, Chimney Rock is the name that the settlers and the pioneers and such gave it. So I asked my older niece, what did the Native Americans call it? Because I'm like, okay, well, there has to be something that they called it, because like that may not have equated to something that they had. So one of the things that they used to call it was teepee rock, or wigwam, or well, not a wigwam, but like a teepee rock, because I can see the resemblance there to a teepee. And then the other one was, and this just made me laugh and go, yeah, that sounds about right. Elk phallic. Yeah. Or elk phallic or GR phallic, whichever one you want to look it up or want to refer to it as. And I'm like, I looked at her and I'm like, say that. What did you say? When she told me that, and I'm like, I believe it. I'm just like, why? And like, she's like, well, that's what the men called it and some stuff. And then the women called it like the teepee, and I'm like, ugh. But like, so we got to walk through the visitor center and everything, and I got some more postcards from that, you know, stuff with like Chimney Rock in the background and such. I like postcards. What do you want? They're very easy to get, and they're like better pictures than I can take. Here's Chimney Rock lit up at night. Tilt the camera. They had cute prairie dogs, so I got that. And like, you know, the Pony Express would go by. Chimney Rock probably used it as like a marker. And then we have like some postcards of like Native Americans and stuff like that that I liked as well. Because like, you know, they did, you know, they probably used Chimney Rock as like a landmark a lot of the times for when they were traveling and such. And I got a Christmas ornament for my mom that has a Chimney Rock on it. And that's not that. I was like, no, those are not the rocks that I talked about yet. I got more rocks to talk about. It's like, if you think Nebraska's flat, it's not. Not all of the state is flat. Because like we're bunched up against like Hawaii. Yes, Nebraska is by Hawaii. No, it's by like Wyoming and Colorado, and like that's, you know, some of the areas in our panhandle are like where some of the mountains start kind of like coming into play. So that kind of affects that. In regards to the geography of the state, but you know, so we're going through that. Like, they have like this activity at the center where like you can fill like this fake you know, covered wagon type thing with stuff, and like you have to try to get it to like a certain, you know, you can't make it too heavy, so it's like they have like all this stuff that represents like, oh, these represents like bags of food, or, you know, barrels of like water, pork, and like different furniture and stuff like that, and other equipment that you would need. And you're supposed to try to load the covered wagon without making it too heavy. And like my nephew's trying to do that, and I'm just like, okay, well, let's start with this first. We get this stuff on because we know we need it. So we did that, And of course, you can go out to the back area and look a little bit closer at Chimney Rock and get some more pictures there. There was a cricket there, or a grasshopper there that was kind of big, so I took a picture of it next to Barry. It did not move, and then like my niece came out and took more pictures of it, and I don't know if it just like eventually left or if she just got bored with it. But she took pictures of it, and I took a picture of it, and then we got like the Barry with Chimney Rock in the background on the plaque about Chimney Rock. And then also because like the settlers would used to like carve their names into like stones and stuff like that. It's like I've been through here, and they mentioned this back at like Archway. You like carve your name in different things, and like they carve like they have like rocks there and like spoons and stuff that you can like use to carve your name. So Barry kind of wanted to carve his name. But we ran out of time, and then we stopped off at this little place that was just down the road from Chimney Rock. That was just called like the trading place or trading port or depot or something like that. And like we got ice cream there and got some stuff. They had like souvenirs and such. And then our next stop was this place that's called Scotts Bluff, which there is a town called Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. But this is just outside of that. There is it's Scotts Bluff, and I believe that it is a national park if I remember correctly. And Scotts Bluff is this huge wall of like bluffs that like come out of that like just like pop up on the landscape. They're huge. Here's one of the bluffs with carriage in the background. Here's one of them at like sunset. These bluffs are freaking huge when you walk up to them and when you drive up to them. And, we got like a video about like how they were formed and like where they came from a little bit and like the history of like the Native Americans and like, the settlers coming in. And then you can drive up, the side of it and in, up to the top, and then you can walk around on the bluff at the top. And like there's certain paths, like stay on this path, don't go off this path. So we got some different pictures there of like Barry up at the top, and like my nieces were having so much fun taking pictures and everything. And got a picture of Barry wedged in a rock with like a dead tree in the background. Lots of these just like, because like the bluffs, it's just like bluff, 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 sheer drop. Yeah. And so it's like all like lots of the stuff, and you see like the layers on the rocks, and there's like trees there's live trees, there's dead trees, there's other flowers, and of course the rule with nature parks and stuff like that is take only pictures, leave only footprints type stuff, or take only the dust that ends up on your shoes type of a stuff. And so it's like we're walking around there and everything and getting lots of pictures, and like sheer drop offs of the cliff. Yeah. Get back from the edge, please. Great views into like Scotts Bluff below. And then we drove to we were making our way through. We were gonna try to do the Trailside Museum at a place that's called Fort Robinson outside of Crawford, Nebraska. And one of the we got there, but they had actually closed because like they had their times listed wrong online, so we couldn't go there on Tuesday. So that was going to end up getting pushed to Wednesday, which was okay. And then we drove on to Crawford, where we stayed in a motel again. My dad had been there another time a couple of years ago with some of his travel buddy friends that he has, and like they'd stayed there, and like the guy had given him a really good deal on rooms, so he was like, Dad was like, return business. And we watched Tekking's Olympic video. But my nephew was just like, why is this funny? And I'm like, it's funnier if you understand the show, but I liked it. And we ate some local stuff while we were there. And then the next day, on Wednesday, was when we went to I mentioned this in the first video because I mentioned like Chimney Rock in the first video. This one I mentioned in the first video. We went to Toadstool National Park, which a very good explanation of Toadstool is this. Those are rocks, like balancing on top of other rocks. Here's just like another picture of like the Nebraska Badlands. Here's Toadstool Park again. A lot of these pictures were probably taken in like the 70s and the 80s and stuff like that. So it was like, here's another very good explanation as to what the rocks look like. Yeah. So yeah, no, there's a Toadstool Park is very interesting. I've been there before. When I went there when I was with my mom and my grandma, I did not get out of the car because I think I was way too hot, and it was like stuff about like rattlesnakes, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. And then it was like nothing but like dirt roads to get there this time around that I'm pretty sure it probably would have been the same last time around, 19, 20 years ago or whatever when I went with my mom and my grandma. And I don't do well in that type of situation. But, so we get out and we start walking around, and it's, you walk up this trail, and like, you get like this, booklet about, oh, this is like, what's here, and you get to talk, they'll tell you about the different types of toadstool monuments that are there, and like the geological history of stuff in the area. There's lots of fossil records there and such. So we had fun going through that. And actually, I did not get this book there, but nope, I'll go over the book next anyway. But like you walk around Toadstool Park, and like you have to like climb up stuff and like carefully step down and everything. And like I'm going through this thing, and like my nieces and nephew were taking pictures, and I got some pictures of Barry with some of the toadstools, and like I'm walking through this thing, and I'm just like, okay, I get that my mom was a lot younger in this time frame, and that my grandma would have been a lot younger in this time frame. My grandma that we did this trip with was like at the time was probably like in her 70s or something, and I'm like climbing over the stuff, and I'm just like, how the F did my grandma do this? And my grandma was like kind of a frail looking woman, and I'm like, how did my grandma do this? But like we climbed all the way around them, and nobody got hurt, nobody slipped, nobody fell. We had water to keep hydrated, we had sunscreen and everything. We did get a little bit red at one point. I'm glad I didn't like burn the entire trip, because I burn. But we had some water and sunscreen and such, and we made our way around and like stopped and rest several times, of course, and took lots of pictures and everything. My niece, which I'm not going to show you the picture, but she did like the Hamilton pose apparently, and then I did like a pose with like Barry a few different places, which was kind of just cute. And like the way that the toadstools work is like they're these huge pieces of rock, these huge like compressed layers of rock, and then underneath them is like sandstone. So like the sandstone has been like worn away, a little more each year by wind, by rain, by people walking on them probably doesn't really help. And we're climbing all over the place. It's like there's fossils that are buried here. We didn't take any fossils because of course you're not supposed to, so we didn't do any of that. We did find a fossil. I hope that other people know about the fossil. It's like these stones, and then like you carefully kind of move around on top of them. But like, a lot of them, like 20, 30, 40 years ago were like much more like the stone and then like this pillar of sandstone holding it in place. And then like that sandstone and clay has gotten washed away so much that now they've just like fallen. And yeah, so that's kind of cool to watch. I have decided that it's like I want to write a One Piece fanfic, or I've kind of started writing one, and I want to make an island that is based on Nebraska. And in that way, it's either going to end up being like it might be like an island that I just make up and like put in like Paradise section when I do that, or like maybe I'll put it in like the New World as something. It's just like this little adventure that they do as like a side adventure. Nothing super bad or anything is going to happen on this island, but they like go there, they explore, and it's going to have like something that looks like Chimney Rock, stuff that looks like Scott's Bluff, stuff that looks like like the sand hills in it and stuff like that. you know, different, all these different, you know, things and like stuff that looks like Toadstool Park. And like, I was like, I'll probably name it like some type of an anagram of like Nebraska or something like that. But I was just like, I just want to do that because that just sounds fun. Um, to like make it that it's like the Straw Hats climb around on these different things, and like Robin's looking through the the geology of stuff, and you know, Usopp's like interested in the plant life, and you know, stuff like that. You know, Zoro tries to like lift one of the things, it's just like just stop type thing. Um, you know, stuff with Barry, and then we moved on to the after that it was we went back from after that we left Toadstool Park, made our way back over the extremely bumpy and dirt and gravel roads back to the main road. On our way back to the main road, this is when we saw the pronghorns. They were just kind of off in the distance, and I was actually driving, and was I driving? No, I don't think I was driving at this point. Maybe I was driving. I don't remember. But we saw the pronghorns, and they were off in the distance, so it's not like they were like a hazard to us, but like we spotted them. And then we made our way back to Fort Robinson, and we went to the Trailside Museum, which had like closed the day before. And then we went to the Trailside Museum, which is like a national geography and paleontology type museum in that area of the state. In Lincoln, we have a place that's called Morrill Hall, and I missed this earlier, but our state fossil is the mammoth, which you may not quite think of that when you come to Nebraska, but our state fossil is the mammoth, and like I think it's like one of the largest mammoth fossils that has ever been found, was found in Nebraska. And this mammoth fossil is at a place here in Lincoln that is called Morrill Hall, that is part of the University of Nebraska. And it's this huge mammoth fossil. And outside of Morrill Hall, there's this huge mammoth, like bronze mammoth statue that like you walk under when you walk into the museum. And it's the mammoth is called Archie, because I don't know why, but he's called Archie. But like the Trailside Museum has mammoths as well. Here's one of their mammoth things. And one of the things that they are famous for is the discovery of a pair of mammoths, male mammoths, that had been locked. That's right. That were like locked in combat with each other. Like they died locked together in like combat, like over females or something like that. And like the theory that they have is like they found the two fossilized together, you know, with their tusks like intertwined, and you know, so they're like digging them out and everything. Like that's one of the main things that you see when you go into the museum is these, you know, two mammoth. You know, there's like this portrait on the wall of like the mammoths, like in their, you know, fighting and everything. And then, you know, you find, you know, you go there and, you know, you see like the mammoth, the skulls that are there that are still like interlocked with each other. And like the theory that the paleontologists have is that like the mammoths had been fighting, and then like they got locked, and then one of them like fell, and then the other one, you know, if you want to get up, you got to be able to pull up the other mammoth, or you know, they couldn't like unlock their I was supposed to say antlers, that's wrong. Their tusks. They couldn't unlock their tusks, and then like they both died of, you know, either starvation, dehydration, take your pick. And then like, you know, then those were, you know, the remains were covered up enough that they were fossilized and they were very well preserved. They have like all these other fossils and such that they have at the museum that you can go and look at. I got other postcards about some of the other animals. This is just one of the various types of carnivores that would have been around. Nebraska is known for having these three-toed horses, which in like our geological record in regards to that. And I'll talk about the horses again in a second. And then of course we have saber-toothed cats in our you know, paleontology type record in regards to that. But the other thing that I bought, that was where I bought the different agate pieces. Yeah, I think that one got a little chipped on the trip. Let's not break it the rest of the way, apparently. But the other thing I bought at that gift shop, besides postcards and that, was A stuffed saber-toothed tiger. A saber-toothed tiger plushie. Yeah. I'm not naming him Who's Who. I'm not doing that. For the One Piece fans, I'm not naming this thing Who's Who. I don't know what I'm going to name it, but he's cute, and I bought him. Right. Yeah. So, whoa. I went too far. I'm back. So we saw that, and the horses in regard to that is like, I'll go over this. I can go over this a little bit more on like some of the other fossil things that we went and saw. But in the Nebraska fossil record, they have found that because like horses at one point, very early horses were in North America and South America, and they were actually like three-toed horses as opposed to like the single-toed horses that we have now. They were like three-toed horses, and like I've seen the fossils of these at like Morrill Hall, because I've been to Morrill Hall here in Lincoln so many times. And like you see these horses and such like that with like the three-toed, and like they're in the fossil record, and like they evolved and everything, and like the other toes got smaller and everything, and then eventually horses here in America kind of died out, and like deer kind of took up that area. And then, when like the Spanish settlers and explorers and conquistadors and everything came back, came to America, they brought horses with them, and then at various points, the horses escaped, and then the horses then eventually then made their way back to like, the plains areas, and like reclaimed that territory that like their, fossilized ancestors had, originally been a part of, millions of years previously. And then, they kind of reclaimed that for a while. And then, of course, settlers came across and, blah, 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 blah. But, so we have that. And then right next to the Trailside Museum is where we have Fort Robinson. Fort Robinson was a working fort here in, Fort Robinson, Nebraska. Now it has kind of been turned into a museum / hotel. It was founded in the 1800s, I think, and was here, had like, lots of posts there and everything for quite a while. And the main thing that Fort Robinson is kind of known for is the fact that let's try this. How many of you are familiar with the Native American chief Crazy Horse? Yeah. If you've been to South Dakota, you've probably, you've seen Mount Rushmore, but you may have also heard of the Crazy Horse Memorial, or the Crazy Horse, statue that they're trying to carve into one of the other mountains there. I have been to Mount Rushmore. I have also been to Crazy Horse Monument. I went there several years ago, like 14, 15 years ago, something like that. I have to adjust my light. And if I remember correctly, Crazy Horse was a Sioux tribe Native American chief. And I think I got that right. If I have that wrong, I apologize. For the history buffs out there, those who are of Native American descent, I apologize if I got that wrong. But he at one point ended up being, because at various points, of course, our country was not good to the Native Americans for most of it. Still kind of isn't. Yeah. But the America has not been very good to the Native Americans for most of the history of America, in regards to people that look like me coming over, unfortunately. But Crazy Horse had been was the chief of his nation, or one of the chiefs of his nation, and they had unfortunately been trying to move them to different reservations. And there had ended up being, these battles that came about between his people and, the U.S. forces and everything that were trying to move them to their reservations. And what ended up happening was they had ended up in Fort Robinson, and just outside of Fort Robinson, in Nebraska. And they ended up, there was like scuffles, and then there was kind of a war, and then there was a rebellion, and like I don't know exactly how to describe it, but unfortunately, Crazy Horse had ended up being captured. He had kind of willingly surrendered as a way to try to prevent his people from being hurt anymore. And there had been a scuffle. He had been taken to the guardhouse, and there had been a scuffle, and he had tried to escape, but unfortunately, he was stabbed with a bayonet by one of the privates in the military section that was there. And it had been kind of an accident, and he had been taken in and he was given medical treatment. He was given medical treatment, but unfortunately he did die. And one of the monuments that they have there is a monument to, to Crazy Horse there for, that's where he died. And then of course, I apologize if there's a bunch of cuts in here. My light source is being a bit weird. And so I have to keep adjusting it. I apologize. But what had ended up happening, it's like the Crazy Horse Monument up in South Dakota is of course still being carved, and I've been there, and it's going to be amazing when it's finished. And I'm sad that I'm glad that there's some of that legacy here in Nebraska too, but I'm sad that that's where it ended, unfortunately. But so there's that and everything. And then we left Fort Robinson, and then we headed to Chadron, which is where they have the Mari Sandos Heritage Center. Mari Sandos was a Nebraskan author who grew up in I think she was in the 1800s into the late 1800s into the 1900s. And one of the books that she wrote was about Crazy Horse. She had talked to people, Native Americans, who had been around and been alive during the same time as Crazy Horse, and knew Crazy Horse, and she interviewed them and wrote down what they said. And one of the things that she did in the book was she didn't even try to fix their language to make it a proper English. She just wrote down what they told her. She had so many other books that she did as well. My dad's read a couple of them, or he's going to read a couple of them. I don't remember exactly what other ones there are, but she's written quite a few of them. And she was this author and everything. And one of the things that they had there was they have her a copy of her desk, and there's a typewriter there, and there's a phone that's the rotary style phone. But so she wrote lots of books, but her desk is there's a rotary phone on the desk. And the lady that was at the Heritage Center at the time, I think her name was Lori was her name. She was showing us around and everything, and she's like, well, do you want to try dialing the rotary phone? I'm like, yes. And so I'm showing the kids how the rotary dial works, just because I've seen enough movies that I know how the rotary dial works. So we did that. And one of the other exhibits that they had going on there at the same time while we were there is an exhibit about I think it's the Capemni. As it is above, it is below. It is about the kind of the Sioux or the Native Americans version of the zodiac, variation of the zodiac. And yeah, so it's their version of that. And one of the things that they had was they had this chart that you could get that was a star chart. So we got that. And then they also had all of these little things where they talked about the different totem animals and stuff like that in regards to your birth time frame and stuff like that. So instead of it being oh, it's the ox and the pig and the dragon and the snake and the cat and the dog, it's the otter totem and the woodpecker totem and the beaver totem, which is what I have for April 20th through May 20th. I have the beaver totem. So my direction is east, my element is earth, and my stone is jasper. So I want to get some jasper. But yeah, so we got the beaver there. There's the wolf totem. There's falcon totem. There's the deer totem, which is what my mom is. There's the salmon totem. There's the bear totem. There's the raven totem. There's the snake totem. There's the owl totem, which is where my dad lands. And then there's the snow goose totem. So it's, it's like they all have all these different things that they represent. And like these different animals, yeah, it's like there's like a beaver and a fish. It's like, okay, well, these are the different animals that represented at that time that were very important to the tribes that were in the area, of course. um so we did that, and then we headed back, and then we headed to for our last night we stayed in Valentine, Nebraska, which is kind of the Valentine capital of the world, as it's sometimes referred to as. One of the other things they also had at the museum was they had this is a Tyrannosaurus Rex. That's wrong. A Triceratops skull that they have there. And my nephew likes dinosaurs, so we took a picture of the Triceratops skull. Also, I then told my nephew about the One Piece chapter where Sasuke uses himself as like a helicopter triceracopter, and my nephew's like, that's not the way that works, and I'm like, I know that's not the way that it works, but it's what they did in the show. um, um they had like lots of different artifacts from the Native Americans there, of course, and they had the Marie Santo stuff, which was quite interesting. And then we headed on to Valentine, Nebraska, where we stayed for our last night at the Niobrara Lodge. Niobrara is a river that flows through Nebraska. It's also the name of a county in Nebraska, I think, or Niobrara City or something like that. The county that Valentine is in is Cherry County, and it is actually the largest county in Nebraska in regards to space. I don't know why my light source is being so bad. I apologize. This is one of the reasons why I didn't end up recording anything when I was actually on vacation, because I couldn't have a good light source in the room. Plus, it was like me bunking with my two nieces, and there was never really any quiet time where I could have recorded that didn't involve me like sending them off to go do something where I can't keep an eye on them in a strange place. So we, so we stayed there. We had pizza at Pizza Hut. It was good pizza. And then there was a pool at that hotel again, so we swam. And then the next day on Thursday, we basically did basically three things. The first thing was we went and did the Niobrara State Wildlife Refuge, which I have stuff here. The Niobrara State Wildlife Refuge, which, as I said, the Niobrara is a river in Nebraska that you can, this would be the better side to show you, is a river in Nebraska that you can actually inner tube down. And I've never done it. It doesn't really interest me because that's not really my style. But you can inner tube down the river, and and such. And there's wildlife in here. And actually, one of the we're coming up to the entrance for the wildlife sanctuary, the wildlife refuge, and there's this deer that runs across the road. We didn't hit it, nobody got hurt, but it runs across the road. And then we get into the wildlife refuge, and we're driving around the wildlife refuge. And one of the things we went and saw was there's this waterfall there that's called Fort Falls. And we go do that. It's you have to get to this area, and then you have to walk down this step trail of stairs and ramps and everything. And you get down to the bottom of it, and you get to see the waterfall. Again, I don't remember if I've seen this before or not, but we got there and we got to the falls, and it was very pretty. There was a tree that had landed across the falls. And Niobrara is actually kind of right in the middle of a lot of the different geological things in the state. So there's tall grasslands here and short grasslands here. So there's lots of mixing in the area. And I took a picture of Barry with some of the tall grass, and a picture of Barry with the waterfall in the background. But we saw the waterfall itself, and there was a dead tree that had landed across the waterfall. Several years ago here in Nebraska, we had a ton of flooding. Part of it had to do with we had gotten a ton of snow the year, that winter, and as it melts, it's just so much water coming down the rivers and such that it floods. Along with a ton of rain at the same time does not combine well. we've kind of recovered from it, but you can still see different areas around the state where there's still evidence of that flooding. And it could also have been that this tree just fell recently because, like, erosion on the rock eventually made it fall from the river, from the water from the waterfall eroding away at it. And then of course, we walk down to the end of the trail and you see like where it goes out into the Niobrara River that flows through there. We also got like a pamphlet that's about like different birds that you can try to spot. While you're in the Niobrara area. Niobrara Wildlife Refuge. See? Buffalo. Buffalo. We did see buffalo here, which, like, the kids have seen buffalo before, so they're not new. We have a place near Lincoln that is called the Wildlife Safari. Zoofari. It's an area where you can drive through that's like a whole bunch of like native wildlife. There's deer and elk and bison / buffalo are in there. There's like an area with wolves that are connected, that are off, that you can go up to, but you can't like go into the area. And there's fencing, and there's like bears there, and there's like wetlands area, so there's birds and cranes and just like turtles and stuff like that there. And so the kids have seen buffalo before. But we're driving along after we leave the fall, and we come across a buffalo, like a lone buffalo. Like, we're coming up the corner, and like we see something at the top of this hill, and it's just like, what is that? It's like, well, it's too wide to be a deer, and it didn't look like a tree because it looked like it was moving. And we get close enough, and lo and behold, it's a buffalo. And it's a bison, and so we've seen them before. They're not new, but it was really close to the car. And I've been in a situation before at the wildlife safari where like they're really close to the car, because like they're just like wandering through this area as like, this is our home, you're the ones visiting type thing. The people in the cars are the ones visiting, and like that, like the cars are not supposed to do anything. They just drive past them. You can take pictures, you can like roll down your windows, but be careful, but don't get out of your car in these areas. And like the bison just kind of look at you, they'll look at your car, maybe they'll sniff your car, but they're like so used to cars that they just like ignore you. And like these guys are probably the same way. And like, but then it like laid down in the grass. Well, I got a picture of like it with like Barry with the buffalo in the background, and then it like laid down on the ground and started to wallow, which is where elephants do this, buffaloes do this, rhinos and hippos and stuff do this. It's like where they like will like roll around in the dirt to try to cool off and try to shake off the bugs. And it starts doing that on the ground, and it's just like, wee, like just rolling around. And like my niece is taking pictures, and I'm taking pictures, and I'm the one driving, but the car stopped at the time. And we rolled down the windows just to get a better picture. And one of the time the bison like lifts its leg up, and like it lines up perfectly with like a black-eyed Susan that lands there, and it looks like it's like touching the flower. So I'm like, that's the picture I'm using for that. So picture of the bison. And like we could like see the sky at various points throughout this. It was like very interesting clouds at the time that looked like it kind of like been like ripped in the sky a little bit, so that was kind of cool. And then we left the Niobrara Wildlife Area, and then we made our way to Smith Falls State Park, which is just another state park that's here in Nebraska. And we made our way there, and they have a waterfall as well. And you make your way through the park. It's mostly like hiking trails and stuff like that, and you go over the Niobrara River, and you see the people. You can see the people that are like tubing down the river and stuff like that. I've never done it. It's way too much amount of stuff in the sun, so I'd probably get very burnt. But you like tube down the river and stuff. Like, you can get in and out of the river at times too, at different spots. It's a tourist thing that you can do, and like locals do it too. But then you walk around, and then like you walk through this path on like this bridge path. And like you hear the waterfall before you see it. You see a smaller waterfall, and then you keep going, and then you come around this corner, and you just see this waterfall that's like huge and big, and like you can hear it, and it like gets cooler once you get closer to it from the wind that's generated from the waterfall. And like, so we got a picture of me here at the waterfall, and like just some pictures of the waterfall on its own. And like you can go down to the bottom of the waterfall, and you know, there's like, you know, you can go down into the water there and like walk around in the water. You're not supposed to climb on the rocks or on the waterfall itself. And we got some great pictures of like looking up at the falls and everything. And, you know, picture of like me and the kids at the bottom of the thing. And like, my feet are hurting at this point in time because, yeah, it's like we did a hike, but I'm okay with the hiking. I took my shoes off and the rocks are really freaking sharp. I mean, like nobody bled or anything like that, but it's just like this hurts more than I expected it to. Um, but like, you know, got lots of pictures of the waterfall from, you know, a couple of different angles, and you know, the kids were in front of the waterfall and having fun and everything. And then we, you know, got out and we walked back down the trail and back to our car and everything. And my dad bought people candy, because, you know, we kind of needed some infusion of of chocolate at that point in time, chocolate or food or whatever. And then we made our way through to what was going to be our last stop, which is a place that is called the Ashfall Fossil Beds. And the fossil beds are a fossil depository, or repository that is, um, I've been here, I think, one other time, like 14, 15 years ago. My dad's family had like a big kind of family reunion type thing, because my dad's family is kind of from that area in the state. And one of my dad's friends, his friend, like married into our family as like one of our cousins or something like that, like twice removed cousin or something. And they have like this kind of ranch area, and they raise longhorn cattle. And like we stayed there, and it was like not just my dad and like his parents and his siblings and like all of my cousins and everything. It was also like my dad's aunts and uncles were there as well. And we had this big party, big, you know, family thing. And then like they drove a bunch of us kids to Ashfall. And the concept for Ashfall is that it is this huge repository of fossils that are all of these plains animals from like several million years ago. And they all died within a certain amount of time from each other because there was this huge volcano that erupted out in Wyoming. And then the ash cloud just spread across, like it spread across Nebraska and like so many other parts of you know, so many other parts of the of, you know, our state and other states. And even parts of the cloud made it all the way to like the Atlantic Ocean, with as thick as it was. But like so many of the animals, like the birds and the fish and everything, suffocated. And then so many of the other animals suffocated or died, from either starvation or from dehydration or just from, you know, suffocating from the ash, because of the fact that it was just so thick in the air and so thick on the ground that nothing was growing. And that like it wasn't raining, or even if it did rain, it was just nothing but like ash rain, that like covered everything. And like the animals died, and like they were covered in this huge layer of ash and soot, and like preserved perfectly, almost perfectly, barring like stuff that was like attacked by like scavengers here and there. And then, you know, so many years ago, you know, I don't remember how many years ago, but like so many years ago, um, they found like these depositories of fossils, and like they built this giant barn over the top of it and started, you know, digging up the fossils. You know, so many things that were just like nearly perfectly preserved fossils. Oh, wrong angle, sorry. Perfectly preserved fossils. And, you know, seeing what they can learn from them and everything. And like there's like fossilized horses there. So here's a picture of me in Barry with like a fossilized horse skeleton. There's like fossilized rhinos, and there's fossilized, like I think there's even like some, you know, other types of, you know, carnivores and herbivores and like all this other stuff. Like here's some of the horses that would have been around the same area, like some of the ones that were still that I showed you from the museum earlier. And here's another one. And here's, you know, like a bunch of like, you know, like the rhinos that would have been around at that time frame, that would have been here in the plains. And, you know, so it's just like all these different fossils that were just so well preserved in the area. And like they've learned so much about them, and like they've just been slowly over the past like however many years slowly digging up more and more. And it's an active dig site, because we saw like probably like students there, like other people there that are like, they're digging up the fossils, and just, they talked about like there's, newer baby fossils, like this new baby rhino fossil that was only found like earlier this year or something like that, in comparison to like all these other fossils that they found, and like some of them are like intertwined, and like there's these huge layers of um ash and soot and everything, and like you have to like dig through it to like find the other stuff very carefully, and like there's fossilized like animal footprints all over the place. There's like a fossilized ant hill, so teching reference and facts, but like so there's all this stuff that they found and learned. And I've been to Ashfall before, but it's been a long time since I've been there. We didn't get to stay there very long, unfortunately, because it closed at like 4:30, and we got there a little bit before 4, or just after 4. We thought it was going to be open longer than that, but we got there, and we got through that, and we got into the gift shop area, and we bought postcards, and I got more squish pennies. My nieces and nephew got some more too. And so we did a lot of that, and like they were very nice and let us stay in the gift shop a little bit. Like I was like, they're spending money, let them stay. But like we got some pictures there, not too many. But like we're going through this, and it was fun, and I very much enjoyed it. And at the other fossil place that we went to was a place called Agate Fossil Beds, which we did I think on like the fourth day. Was Agate third day, fourth day? Third day, I think. We did Agate Fossil Beds earlier in the week, so this is like a I think this was like a giant carnivore at the time. And then we have like a postcard of like a Native American and a settler. Two cultures, one land. Because some of the archaeologists and the fossil hunters were like advocates for the Native Americans. Some weren't, some were. In different areas. This is like stuff that was like at Agate Fossil Beds. There were just other fossils that are very similar to what were like found at Ashfall. Some of the other animals, fish, carnivores, mammals, all types of stuff that they found there. Lots of geography and such like that, or geology that goes along with it. That are just so many different fun things that you can learn, and it's just like, no, Nebraska is not flat. Nebraska is not flat. That is coming from a Nebraskan. Nebraska is not flat. But like the other thing that I got was I got this book at Agate. That's Princeton Field Guide to Prehistoric Mammals, and like these are like saber-toothed cats with like mammoths in the background, and I think this is supposed to be like a giant sloth. And like there's like all these different animals and such that like I might be able to like that are like fossilized mammals that they've found in the past, and like what they would have evolved, like what their descendants kind of evolved into to a degree and such. And I like older mammals and stuff like that. I just think they're so cool. And I might just do like a series where I make like different devil fruits based on like, prehistoric animals. And then I also bought, this is a goldstone from Ashfall. But, I got shirts. I got a shirt that has, like, Sasquatch on it from Chimney Rock. And then this one, this shirt is, like, a bunch of mammals, like, ancient mammals, and, like, a dinosaur with, like, an X'd out dinosaur that says Mammals Rule from, like, Ashfall. So, I really liked the trip. I enjoyed the trip. We got back Thursday night. Kids are starting to get a little unruly in the car, but that was to be expected. And our total numbers, if I remember correctly, another thing about Ashfall is like it was like featured on like Bill Nye the Science Guy at one point. He was on Ashfall for like one of the videos about fossils that he did, and then like it's also on like the 10 great places to soak up science from like USA Today, and then like the final numbers from the trip was like there was 5 people, 1 car, 1 state, 5 days, 1 berry plushie. and we did, the total ended up being 12,006 miles. Sorry, 1,206 miles. Nebraska's big though. No, 1,206 miles. Probably like 1,208 or so, given the fact that I didn't reset the mileometer until after when we were leaving my sister's house. Probably should have started it when it was like here at my house, before we went and picked up the kids. But so 1,106 to 6 to 8 miles, and it's just like, yeah. Not giving you a total on how much it costs, because I don't want to do that math. But yeah, lots of places all over Nebraska. Just big tourist thing for Nebraska. Go to Nebraska, see what else is here, or just look up stuff from Nebraska. It's we have very we're not flat. We have very interesting things all over the state. Not just in this half of the state where we have Lorenzen Gardens and the Omaha Zoo and Durham and Jocelyn and all the stuff in Lincoln and Omaha. But there's stuff all across the state that's very, very interesting. So I guess that's what I got there for that. So I thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. My first years were spent living just as my forefathers had lived, roaming the green rolling hills of what are now the states of South Dakota and Nebraska.